Final Fantasy? Final Fantasy XII is a game full of mystery and intrigue, and these things. I'm gonna be honest with you all right now and admit something. This is the second time I've written this script from scratch, and that's because I originally planned this video to rake the game over hot coals and give it a barely passing grade. But I went back to it to gather more footage and get reacquainted with its gameplay and its story, and the most peculiar thing happened. I enjoyed it. Now, this doesn't absolve the game of its sins, but I am much more cognizant of its strengths, so like usual, we're going to dig into the story, the gameplay, and its unique systems, and get through the good, the bad, and the begamnon. Oh my god. Final Fantasy XII takes place in a world that longtime fans of the Final Fantasy series will be quite comfortable in, the world of Ivalice. Ivalice is a storied world already, and those who have played the Tactics series will already be acquainted with some of the lore of the region. Final Fantasy XII takes place a long time after Final Fantasy Tactics, however, in a world that is currently ravaged by war. You follow Vaughn, an orphan with dreams of being a sky pirate, who, I'm gonna be honest, has little to no personal impact on this story. Due to the events of the prologue, Vaughn finds himself in a bad situation. With the loss of his brother and the subsequent domination of their kingdom by the Empire, he turns to a life of crime just to get by. Deciding to rob the palace while the guard is focused on welcoming its new head of state, Vaughn is swept up in a plot to take back Dalmasca, and everything kind of spirals out of control from there. Bear with me, there is so much happening in this story. I mentioned already that Vaughn has very little impact on this story, and in my opinion, that's one of the first problems in this story. Our protagonist just doesn't feel that important. Every character in the story gets their time to shine, but Vaughn feels out of place. He's naive and reckless, and in the end, his greatest asset is just getting the other party members together. Vaughn's friend Penelo isn't much help either. Most of the time, she's just in the background, existing, or being a damsel in distress. She has a bit more story relevance than Vaughn, but it's not a great look. Fran is a Viera who left the woods and presumably her jacket behind. Fran, it's cold out there. What are you doing? Fran isn't much for words, but being a Viera, she's closer to nature than the other races, and can sense the mist, which is sort of like if monsters had BO, but instead of them making it, it made them. Neat. Fran has her own moments in the story, but most often she just serves as a supporting hero to the leading man. A strapping, handsome gentleman, Balthier is a man who can do no wrong. I mean, a sky pirate with a penchant for talking fancy and acting better than you, which is deserved because he is.
The prison repository of wrested relics and raiments.
So, our things are in here?
That's what I said.
I don't make the rules. Balthier has a direct link to the Empire, being the son of an influential military scientist. Bosch is a war hero who was framed for the murder of his king in a vain attempt to prevent the treaty with the Empire. This inadvertently caused Vaughn's brother's death and ended up with him getting thrown into the deepest pits of the Nalbina dungeons. And the last of our crew is Ash, the supposedly dead princess of Dalmasca. She's desperately trying to take her kingdom back from the Empire. She's obviously still alive, and she's obviously not doing a very good job. She ends up getting Vaughn, Balthier, and Fran captured and sent to Nalbina, a border fortress of Dalmasca used as kind of an inescapable prison. Again, just bear with me, there's a lot happening in this game, and my brain is actively turning into soup trying to figure out what I need to tell you. Final Fantasy XII is a very politically involved story, and all you really need to know is that once we free ourselves from Nalbina, our group of two teenagers with no clue what's happening, a sky pirate and his scantily clad bunny girl who has no skin in the game, a soldier just trying to do right by his kingdom, and a princess who wants to restore her kingdom are thrust into a battle to save their country that will very quickly become a battle for the world. Along the way, we are joined by many allies such as Larsa, the intelligent but naive heir to the throne of the Empire, and many other allies that assist us through different subsections of the game. All of these characters have major impact in their respective parts of the story, with one of them eventually betraying Ash and trying to stop her, or Larsa constantly trying to manipulate events in the group's favor before he's essentially ousted by his brother and the true antagonist of the game, Vayne Solidor. Vayne becomes the head of Rabanastre, the capital city of Dalmasca, pretty early on in the game, and puts a smiling face on to offer an olive branch to its people. In reality, however, Vayne is just using his power as the son of the Emperor to manipulate the country and curry favor with his Senate. He then has his father murdered so he can take absolute control of the Empire for his own goals. Efficiency. Vayne is a case of a character doing the wrong things for the right reason. A large part of the lore of Ivalice is how gods control most of what comes to pass. Much of the story is a rebellion against the gods' control of the world, brought on by one called Venat. Venat plants the seeds of control in Vane's head, as well as the head of Sid, Balthier's father and the head of scientific research in the Empire. Venat wants to rid the world of God's influence, and Vane desires to put the reins of history back into the hands of man. 2 peas in a pod.
Not lightly will the Ecuria allow you to wrest the reins of history from their grasp, back into the hands of men.
While Vane's motives may not seem evil on paper, it ends up being his methods that our allies disagree with, and that's kinda where we come in. Initially, the story is us escaping the Empire and them pursuing us so that they can obtain the treasures that Vaughn stole from the palace at the start of the game. First, they throw us in the prison of Nalbina, and once we escape, then we go to a sky city of Bujerba. That's where we learn about the Empire's influence in the world, and then go to free Ash from their clutches. After that, we end up on a search for our own power to put an end to the Empire while they chase us around. That's basically the plot of the first third of this game, and honestly, while there is a lot happening behind the scenes, a lot of this game is just sort of this cat and mouse chase where we play the insurgents sneaking around for the cheese and the Empire is just a cat trying to swat us away. There are a lot of details I'm glossing over, so if you're curious, maybe one day I'll do a retrospective, but for now we're just gonna leave it there. Many people really didn't like Final Fantasy XII because it told this political story that was full of nuance, claiming it was hard to follow, convoluted, or just plain boring. But I do have to disagree there. This political intrigue is the primary reason to even play Final Fantasy XII in the first place. The story is great, the world building, fantastic, and with a history of existing titles to back it up, it feels like one of the most lived-in worlds the series has to offer. I can't understand why people wouldn't enjoy the story, unless you're just not fond of war dramas in the first place. Final Fantasy XII's gameplay is divisive, and not because it drifts away from what's expected of JRPGs or because of the ongoing debate between turn-based and ATB, which is action time battle, but because the gameplay is completely different from anything seen before in the series, for better or for worse. Let's talk about the exploration part of it all first. The world of Ivalice is very open, with a lot of places to explore and venture off the beaten path, which is really cool. The problem is you're seldom rewarded with anything of value for doing it. Most chests in the game are randomly generated with loot from an item pool equivalent to that part of the game, often just being minuscule bits of gil. If you're lucky, you could maybe get some equipment. All of this gives you a reason to explore, but not always the first time you even get to the map. This openness is a strength for the game, but sometimes hunt spawns are more obnoxious than interesting, and rare creatures seldom come up in a casual playthrough. None of that's really divisive though, at least not as much as the combat is. The transition from combat to exploration and vice versa, for the first time in the series, is basically seamless, and that's the end of what I enjoyed about the combat. Your party of 3 is led by a single leader character, that is whoever you're controlling. And the other 2 are controlled by an AI that you build using a system called gambits. Gambits are essentially if-then commands that you can set to each character, like if party member's HP is 50%, then cast Kier. And this system has its ups and downs. On the one hand, this gives you an incredible amount of control over how your characters act in battle. Character gambits can be changed, turned on or off, and have their priority switched around, and their results and requirements moved around too. This makes character AI very responsive, but it also has a catch, and that catch is that it applies to your character as well. So nothing is stopping you from just automating the entire gameplay process, which I did. I know it's making my own bed and lying in it, but there are a few reasons I did this. Number one is you're going to be switching characters around a lot, especially if you want to keep everyone leveled up. And 2, because this game runs very slow, which is rectified by the built-in speed-up included in the remasters. This means that it's a game that plays itself, and if you want to play it yourself, you'll have to contend with an incredibly slow ATB or trying to keep up with the much faster ATB, as well as swapping your party leader often. You can turn gambits off from the combat menu as well as override them, so you do have a lot of freedom in how you want to play the game, but personally I don't find any one way more entertaining. Final Fantasy XII does boast some very interesting mechanics though, with varied buffs and debuffs that allow you to cripple enemies, set up dedicated tanks, and protect your backline in a way that feels more like an MMO than a JRPG. And then there are the quickenings, which are basically just action command cinematics that do damage to your enemy. These look really cool, but they take a long time for what is essentially a minigame that breaks up the flow of battle. Summons are another interesting mechanic, with each summon needing to be defeated to be used, and they are all tied to one character at a time. Summons will hit the field, do their thing, and then they last a certain set amount of time. After that, each summon has an ultimate ability that they can use to end their summoning and return to your normal battle. All of this is interesting, but executed in ways that don't really work for me, and it's really only boss fights that felt particularly fun to do, or even present any real challenge. I think the boss designs are good, even though a lot of them early on are skippable just by spamming quickenings, and there's plenty of reason in each boss fight to change up your gambits and assume direct control over specific needs of your party. This is further solidified by remedies being weaker in the game until you have certain licenses, and status effects being kind of all over the place. Most of the time I had to manually cure my status effects until I got Asuna, as it was just easier than trying to set a gambit for all of them since you're kinda limited on how many gambits you can have. This all comes together to be a somewhat disappointing experience. Gambits simplify the game a little too much for my liking. It doesn't really feel good to run around killing enemies, and I had numerous moments where I would run in circles in a map while grinding and watch videos on the side because I really just didn't need to be there except to hold forward. Final Fantasy XII is another entry in the series that tackles progression in a unique way, and that way is the license board. For the purposes of this, we will be covering the Zodiac Age version, because it's what I like the most. In this game, basically everything is locked behind the license board, from equipment that you can use to abilities that you can buy, even how many gambits a character can equip. There are even stat bubbles that'll give you large boosts to different stats, primarily just HP, and levels will give you more consistent stat growth. The beauty of this system is the versatility of how you enhance your characters. You're really only limited by where you've already been on the grid, letting you prioritize different things depending on your current needs. New to the Zodiac Age version is the job system, which divides up what parts of the board each character can visit, keeping them all from being homogeneous. Classic jobs like the Black Mage and White Mage are here, and more unique classes like the Shikari and Foebreaker offer different tools and equipment for you to decide on. I really think this is the best iteration of the license board, and one of my favorite progression systems in Final Fantasy as a whole. It really highlights 12's goal of giving you absolute control over your characters, from their AI to how they grow and their abilities. It makes 12 the obvious game of choice for those looking for the most customizable adventure. Hunts help tie the world together and make it feel lived in. They're almost always a small sub-story about a dangerous monster causing serious problems for someone, and in order to start them, you have to find the requisitioner and talk to them about it, and then you have to return to them once you're done. It tells you a bunch of little things about people's lives and what happens around you. It's these little things that make the world so great, and one of the big strengths the game has. While Final Fantasy XII doesn't have the best gameplay in my opinion, it has one of the best settings in the series, and its story is deeply enjoyable, with a lot happening and so much more than I even explained here. Its characters are mostly fantastic across the board, and their motivations are deeply ingrained in who they are and how they act. Its dungeons and fields feel unique, offering plenty of exploration, albeit without great rewards. And its puzzles aren't too overbearing and often tie the lore of the world into their solutions. Make no mistake, this is a busy game. It has a lot to tell you, and sometimes it might be a little boring. You may be wondering when it will get to the point, or even if something even matters, but it's well worth the time invested just to explore Ivalice. It's not one of my favorite games in the series, and I was originally going to put it in C tier, citing the gameplay and the overall grating main protagonist. But as the story goes on, Vaughn takes a backseat to the true hero of the game, Balthier. So I'm giving this game a B for Balthier. Why doesn't he notice me, man?